Hey, Mike.
Hey, Frank.
Ooh.
Welcome to Perspective Shift.
Welcome.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well.
Good, man.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
We are coming up on the holiday season. We've got Thanksgiving this week. That should be fun.
I already have my tree up.
Hey.
Karen's like, she's going out of town right after Christmas, so right before New Year, she's going out of town, and she's like, I'm gonna miss the tree for a week, so we have to put it up a week early. I'm like, I'm not.
I like her thought process.
And it's funny. Like, I'm like, why so early? And she just looks at me. I'm like, all right, we'll put it up early.
She's like, just
like,
get it up, dude.
Stop being
The
foolish.
quick questioning.
Yeah, by next year, it'll be up in August.
Seriously.
Yeah.
No, man, the house looks great.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, so who are we covering today, Frank?
We are going to cover and review Tony Robbins. Well,
Yes.
I should say review. We'll talk about him like he needs a review. Everyone knows who Tony Robbins
We're going
is.
to introduce this gentleman to the world.
Yeah, to start off, hey, like I remember years ago when he because he's not that much older than I am.
Okay.
I think like 7 years older. But I remember years ago getting his cassette tapes. Mike's probably like, what the hell's a cassette tape?
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, my first tape was the Men in Black tape. I remember, like, I had it. My first thing, first music I ever purchased was
really?
a Men in
The
Black
soundtrack to
cassette
Men in
tape.
Black?
Yeah.
Wow.
Literally the first.
Were you like 5?
I don't even know. I had to be like 8. But yeah,
Right
that was
on.
the first thing I had. Was I remember it, a cassette by Men in Black.
Yeah, I remember you get this like plastic case and you get in there and you open it up, and I think there was like, can't remember. It was one of his systems you did, and you listen to the cassette tape he walks you through. And I remember it was like when I was doing it, it was really good. And I heard recently he was talking to somebody, and he was in an interview, and the interviewer said the guy mentioned that he read a comment to the guy says, I was doing this stuff and it worked for a year, but then it stopped working, And with Tony Robbins, like, well, if you go to the gym for a year and you stop going after that, it's going to stop working.
That's a good response.
No, it's true because when I was in the midst of doing that stuff, what it did, it keeps you focused on something. Even if you don't like, okay, what the hell is this? Like one of the things he had you do is write in a diary every day.
Okay.
It was funny. I get to the point where my life was pretty good, I had nothing to really complain about. So 4 months in, I'm like, okay, I'm writing in my journal because I have to write my journal.
This is what
I wasn't
supposed
the
to
most
do.
creative back in the day, But yeah, he's helped millions of people around the world.
See, that's
with all
awesome.
this stuff. So yeah.
Well, so I want to be honest. So I was kind of hesitant to do Tony Robbins on this episode and do an episode on Tony Robbins, and the reason being is I'll rewind a little bit. I was the first time I ever remember truly Tony Robbins was a movie I think it was the early 1990s, Shallow Hal.
Shallow Hal.
Yeah, that was my introduction.
When he smacks the guy in the head in the freaking elevator.
That was my introduction, and that's like how I know and remember Tony Robbins was that movie, just because of my age, etc. Like that's when I was first really introduced to him, and it's funny. So like the reason I say I was hesitant to do an episode on Tony Robbins is because he's always been seen.
That's like learning about World War II by watching Hogan's Heroes.
I know. I'm trying to be honest here, though.
No, it's
good.
That's
exactly when I met or was introduced to this guy, and I remember him from that very vividly. I love that movie. I love it was funny. But that was my introduction, and the reason I was hesitant, when we first talked about doing Tony on this show was because Tony, carries it and has this idea, that he's like this motivational speaker. He's this infomercial. He's this seminar guy, and I just didn't want to like cheapen, the consciousness. I didn't want to cheapen, the concepts that Frank and I talk about on this show. I wanted it to be, and in a way, I had felt in the past that some of his stuff was cheapening the real meaning behind stuff, and then I realized like what a sour view I had, and what a one-sided perspective I really had on this gentleman, because like
I just like the fact that you think we have standards.
Hey,
I was like, wow.
I do.
We got standards here on
totally
Perspective Shift.
We totally have standards, and so that was something that like had gone through my head, because Frank and I, we've talked about featuring Tony a couple times in the past, but like I realized like, hey, look, number one, we can find whatever perspective we want in any given situation.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And so for me to take a perspective that, we shouldn't feature somebody because I've felt or I've seen it, it could be seen in this light. That's me cheapening it, the experience, because Tony's out there helping millions of people. No one can deny that.
Yeah.
I know I work with, so I'm in real estate. I work with a ton of real estate agents and brokers that really love Tony's work and still to this day go to his seminars to this day.
But you know what it is? I know exactly what you're talking about but the thing about Tony Robbins is he's taken he's taken something that most people in the world focus on, that's money, and when dealing with money, business. And he showed people the techniques to do stuff. And then once he did that, then this enlightenment understanding came out. Because it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. But when you get to the place, you can actually show them what it's really about. It's not about making money. It's about focus. And when you take that focus and you focus in your business, you can focus here, focus here, focus here. You become a focused individual, even in your spiritual life.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of times people are very short-sighted when they look at anybody. They're very skewed, like, they do this one thing, so therefore everything they do is wrong. And I'm like, no. And I think a lot of the spiritual world will evade business or making money. But yet, what I always found funny is they're always trying to raise money. Yeah, right. So what he did is he took the concepts, and that's what he's brilliant at. He's brilliant at interviewing everyone from all walks of life. And then how do I take all this stuff and put it in a small package? Kind of like, how did Steve Jobs take a computer that could take up a one floor on a building and putting in a phone?
Yeah.
So that's Tony Robbins, like the Steve Jobs of the psychological understanding and into business and everything else. And that's how he packages it, and he studies it deep. And that's what I appreciate about him.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And one thing, like going full circle, like this week, that I realized personally is a lot of the things, all of the things that we experience when we push up something against something in life, like me being like, I don't know if we should feature Tony. There was a reason about something I needed to learn about myself. And if you're seeing something that you're like about someone, outside of you, it's directly showing you what's going on within you, and you're seeing something about yourself that you need to either work on, or grow from, etc. And I began to realize, so I very much so like Tony Robbins. So I this last week when we were researching, going through a lot of his different stuff, I realized I watched him like really grow spiritually, like as a person, like evolving, especially from like his earlier stuff, to date, because now he's talking about a lot of these consciousness topics, on his podcast. He's got different spiritual type leaders, and teachers coming onto his shows, and he's beginning to blend the two, and I can see that in his evolution. But me personally, that's how I started down this path. I didn't start down this path with this idea of unconditional love and how I know these concepts to date and how I feel about them now. I very much was in a spot where I was like, dude, my life sucks. I don't like this. I don't like being this character. Like I'm not comfortable. I'm not in a place that I, am proud of. I'm not in a place that I know I'm capable of being in. And that's when I like really started to get into, like a Dr. Joe, and I started to learn about how the subconscious mind works. And I began like, okay, I'm going to change my situation. I'm going to learn how to earn money. I'm going to have financial freedom. And I came from that space. And then as I began to understand this subconscious mind, as I began to implement these techniques, as I began working on myself and scratching this surface, I realized, oh my gosh, these concepts, there's so much more to this. Like if I'm able to go in there and reprogram my mental patterns and begin to find success and begin to, experience this life that I know that I deserve to experience, what is this reality? What is going on? Yeah. And so I personally, like, it started with an ego-based want. I want to make more money. I want a better life. I don't want to feel like shit. So I started to learn about the subconscious mind and how this affects our daily lives. And then from there, I realized, holy shit, this is just surface level stuff. This whole, reprogramming in the mind and, getting in there and, having, the bringing the goals to fruition, manifestation, all of that, law of attraction. That's all very surface level, because you go deeper, you realize, oh, wow, like I am everything. I am this creator, and this flow, this world around me, this is myself pushed out. I'm witnessing these other characters as a reflection of me and what I need to learn about myself. And it went from a money motivated, I want to be the best of the best, type of thing, to realizing, oh my gosh, this is a do-it-yourself experience. Everything I'm experiencing, stems and comes from, the self, this higher power, this higher awareness. And that's how I kind of got into where I'm at now, which is, understanding the value and importance in unconditional love and what that is. And like how we've been taught love, and we've gone over this in past episodes, is so different from what true unconditional love really feels like and is. There's no judgment. There's no measurement. There's none of that. And it's realizing that every experience you're going through in life is simply to teach you more and more about yourself. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I was judging Tony like I was judging myself, which is I had ego-motivated reasons to understand and learn these concepts. And then as I began to learn them and realize, there's much more to this subconscious mind thing, and diving deeper and deeper, that's where my judgment came from. In a sense, I saw like what Tony like started out as, and I was like, I didn't like it because that's how I kind of started out. And I was like, there's more than just financial freedom, because these concepts he's talking about, guys, and the reason we're having Tony, on this show is every motivational speaker out there, every single motivational financial person out there, preaching these concepts, we're all talking about the same thing. They're all talking about consciousness. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, Tony Robbins. I could go on. The list goes on. Napoleon Hill, whoever. We're all talking about the same thing, consciousness.
Yeah, and there's Susan. So, like, the thing about Tony is, like, he'll say, I don't like to be considered a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
And, or a guru. I know he has a special on Netflix that says, I am not your guru.
I love that.
And it's really, it's a really nice, I guess you call it a documentary, but it's a featuring of, it's one of his shows he does. His seminars. I think it was part of his week long. So it gave you, like, a little insight to him behind the stage and what he was doing in front of the audience, which is pretty spectacular, because what he's somewhat mastered is the psychology of people understanding where they are and then speaking to them from that place and getting them to see it. So that's where his true compassion is, because, hey, he owns, I don't know how many businesses, like 50-something. At one point he owned 100-something businesses. The guy has money that doesn't really relate to his seminars, but they're all entwined to it. He could easily stop his seminars and go off into the sunset, so to speak, but he doesn't. He actually rather help people. He's doing a podcast. He keeps current. He's been around,
40 years.
Yeah.
Right?
At least, yeah. So 4 decades. And this man has never lost his intensity to getting this information out there. And I think that's what it is. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about people becoming rich. It was about focusing on something. And when you focus on something, you must get results, especially if it's you're focusing on, a lot of people focus on misery and they get misery. There's your result.
Weird.
There's your result. But he was teaching people that were focusing on misery to focus on something more uplifting, something more productive. And that's what he talked about. And that's what we came here, is the meek won't inherit the earth. Now, I know a lot of people look at meek as like some weakling, measly, but over time, the word meek has been misused. Meek actually means surrender, and there's another part of it, steadfast. And I've looked it up, and there's other words that mean weak or whatever, but I think it was misconstrued. So if you take steadfast, translate it is to focus. And when you focus and you to surrender to what happens, the outcome is brilliant, and you will inherit the earth. So there's a tremendous amount of focus in his teaching. He teaches you how to focus in the direction in which you choose to go. And then it's you surrender to see what happens. It's not like, oh, if I don't make $1 million, like, no, if you were making 50 grand and now you're making 900 grand a year, you're not going to be pissed off, are you? You're moving in the right direction. But if you were shooting for $1 million, you don't call that a failure. But if you were working on something, you're making 50 grand a year and you're still making 50 grand a year, maybe you are doing something wrong.
Correct.
So even spiritually, like, if you're not becoming enlightened, less, controlling of your emotions or whatever, however you look at spirituality, because I have my way of looking at it, there's a technique for that, and it's called focus. When we meditate, what are you doing? You're focusing on your breath. You're focusing on the stillness. You're focused on something, and you get a result from it. So he's teaching you how to get results, and it's so much easier to encapsulate most individuals through the idea of money, but he's not about the money. Like I said, the guy probably has enough money to live like 3 or 4 lifetimes, but he chooses not to do that. Matter of fact, I think one of the great stories I've heard him say, where, he grew up very poor. There was one, I forgot how old he was young, but it was a Thanksgiving, we're a couple of days away from Thanksgiving here. And someone came to the door with food and knocked on the door, and his father opened up the door. And, Dad was just like, opened the door. He's like, what do you want? And he's like, I got a meal for you and your family. And he's like, I don't take charity. And he goes to slam the door in the guy's face, and the guy put his foot, stopping the door. He goes, sir, it's not charity. I'm just, handing it here. It's just, we know you need some help. Because I don't need help from you. And the guy, he went to push him out, and the guy held the door and just pretty much said to the father, Tony Robbins' dad, and said, listen, this is not, don't think about yourself, think about your family. And so he ended up taking the food in. But what Tony got from that is that somebody cared enough to drop their family off food. And that, like, whenever I see that story, it hits me because I've never went through that in my life. I once didn't get a Snickers bar because my dad wouldn't want me to have it, but that was about it. It wasn't like I was going to starve. But not he started off his journey knowing that I never want to be in this feeling again. And now because of what he does, if I'm not mistaken, I hope I'm not misquoting this, but he feeds, he every year is like 25 million meals.
Well, he had a goal. Remember, like during COVID, it was like 2.2 billion meals was his goal.
Yeah, I think so. It keeps elevating higher and higher.
Billions of meals.
Yeah. So, and the man, the cool thing about Tony is when he puts his mind to it, it's going to work. And it's like, okay, Tony, and he'll tell you this, it's not me, it's the system that we're in. If you put your mind to anything, it will work. He's showing you. So he came from a very impoverished place. After his dad left, his, mom went to, I think, 3 or 4 more marriages. So he says he has like 4 dads, but yet never had any stability in the role model of just not even male, this female too. His mom was an alcoholic and very abusive, but he never stopped loving her. So we already had this oddly positive outlook. And I say oddly because, I know people that had great lives and they're just miserable.
Yeah, those are heavy circumstances.
See what the government's doing. And
yep.
So he had this natural ability to look over the obstacle or look at the obstacle and say, that's just a small hurdle. Let's have fun jumping over this. And I believe that we all came here, signed a contract, not to run on a nice, smooth track. We came here to run on a trail. It's called the obstacle course. Everyone's like, what's happening here? I'm like, what's happening? I'm like, this is the obstacle course. Like, you don't want to remove the wall. Then it's just a simple path. We want this rigorous thing. We want to see what we're made of. And Tony's actually gets in his program, show you these tools to let you actually see what you're made of. And that's the brilliance about Tony Robbins. He does it better than anyone I've ever known. Like, even like Dr. Joe Dispenza, I love his findings. But when I go to his seminars, I've been to a couple of them, and again, I could be wrong, but the format and how he does it is exactly how Tony Robbins started. Tony Robbins started this big, huge, mega.
That's it.
Like, thing when you go there and the energy is so high and stuff like that. And so now, obviously, Joe Dispenza is like into neuroscience and everything else and meditation, stuff like that. But when you go there, it feels like you're at a Tony Robbins conference. The information is slightly different, but yet the same. Mm-hmm. But Tony Robbins, to some degree, he didn't invent it, but he blew it up.
He did.
He blew it up with music. The psychology. He's studied everyone and knew the perfect music to play at the perfect time, keep people active and everything else. I think there was a story he was telling somebody about when, I think it was like a 5-day or 7-day retreat, and I think he invited Oprah. And Oprah's like, I can't. I don't have time to do this for 7 days. And then after 7 days, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe I was able to do that. So he has the ability through a process, a really stringent process, to keep like a 12-hour day. People like, if you think about 12-hour day, you're going to get tired in your head. But all of a sudden, if 12 hours goes by and you're still pumped up, kind of like you were a child when nothing was pulling at you, he actually creates these events. That's why they're brilliant. Like,
have you been to a Tony Robbins event?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. I've watched them, but I've like online. So I was watching online, but I've been to other events that was similar to it. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's just it's like trying to get Stones tickets, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he does the walk on fire, where he has like people, come and they walk on the hot coals. He pushes you past that physical, that mental and physical.
Yeah,
barrier.
and what it is people have been doing that for millennia, that type of stuff. But he's taken it and made it into a more pragmatic way. Because like you think about the people who used to do it years ago, where he got it from, probably like Polynesian and indigenous people like
exactly.
that. Well, when you're brought up into that, like for me, I was brought up in boxing, so learning how to take a punch and ducking from a punch and throwing a punch, it was natural. Mm-hmm. But then teaching someone that's like, look at like, you want me to walk over that, and like on Tuesday they had no idea they were doing this, and now here on Saturday they're walking across coals. That is incredible. Like to get someone in the mindset that quickly, and that's what he does. You could listen to a video is for 10 minutes and you're already in that mindset.
Yeah.
And he has the ability, he has like the power and but he lives it. He's imbues it. He's not just doing it to sell and make money. You can tell. There are people out there that they call the charlatans. Yeah, their information's good, but it's like, do they really care? I don't know. I'm not here to judge, but with him, I followed him for 40 years, and this man really cares about individuals. He really does. And that's kind of, he does. Jeez, I got to work on my English.
No, but I know exactly what you're saying. And it's very evident, too, in his speech, in the concepts, in his delivery. Like, he's not just selling you something. And he could have stopped 2 decades ago and still been more than fine. What he's doing financially, etc.
Yeah, what he's doing is giving your wallet or your purse back to you after you dropped it. He's showing that you actually like, I need money. I'm like, no, you dropped your wallet. The money's in it. He's actually showing that you already have it in you. That's the brilliance of it. He's not giving anything to you. You're doing the work. Well, that's why he calls himself a coach.
Yeah.
Not a motivational speaker.
Bring that up too, the Larry King thing.
Yeah, I believe this is the story, but he was on Larry King. I don't know what year it was, and
had to be a while ago in the 90s or something. Though,
right? Yeah. I'm not. I should have looked up it.
Yeah.
But you'll get the point. And so Larry King's talking to him. It's like, so you're a motivational speaker, and he's like, well, I'm not a motivational speaker. I don't like to be motivated. I'm not a guru. And so Larry's like, Larry's trying to conduct an interview. He's like, well, what are you? So I was like, and he had this look on his face, like, I'm more like a coach.
Yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know, that is a life coach. That term came from Tony Robbins on Larry King.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then ever since, people that are doing life coaching, that's where the term came from. And it's a brilliant term because coaching is different than motivating. Because I can motivate someone to do something they don't want.
Yep.
All right. I could be a guru and lie to people. That's a cult leader. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be, not all the time, but it can be. Or I can coach you and tell you, like, you got it in you. But once you get on the field, you're on your own, dude. And then you come back to the sideline and like, okay, it didn't work out. Okay, what do you think you did wrong? And a good coach doesn't yell at them. They say, "What? Okay," because the person knows what they did wrong, actually. They really do.
Every time.
You come back, okay. And then the coach will remind them, okay, keep your hands up. It's coming. Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, now, boom, you go out there. I'm like mixing in different sports here. Keep your hands up. You don't in this side. There's no sidelines in boxing, by the way.
I didn't even know.
No,
I assumed there was.
They're still getting out of the damn ring. You're stuck in there. You're like, oh shit, what's that fella gonna ring?
That's so funny.
So, but and he does. I follow him. I've been following him for years, always. And like, I know what you're saying. Like, when you followed his practice, you became successful. Mm-hmm. To what level? Whatever level you followed it. Like, it's like, hey, how far do you want to run? How far your feet will let you, or how far your mind will let you run, and just keep running, and you'll know. But if you say, I can only do this, I can only do that, I'm like, you can only do that is something that you might want to take out of your vocabulary. I don't know what I can do. I like that because it's going to leave me. But I only can do this. Stops me at the door. And I like to go beyond the door. Yeah. One
of my favorite things when we were, really diving into Tony this week is I learned that when he was 17, he was a janitor. That was his first gig or whatever. And he had no money. I think he was making $40 a week is what it said. And one of the buildings he cleaned was this landlord, and it happened to be a family friend. And he went up to the landlord and he was like, "Hey, look, what are you doing, to make money? In fact, my dad told me you were such a bad guy. If you're such a bad guy, how are you successful? How did you find success?" And he's saying this to the landlord of the apartment complex that he's cleaning. And the landlord, told him, I turned my whole life around by going to a Jim Rohn seminar. And for those of you who don't know, Jim Rohn is also discusses these same concepts, goes over these exact topics. Yeah. But this was Tony's introduction to this, to the mental chatter, to the idea that, we have ability to go in and really, reprogram and rewire the way we think and act. And we know this is true, by the way, society, on a measurable scientific scale. I believe we are the only mammal, or maybe it's the only species that has the ability to actually witness our thoughts, not be our thoughts. Like a dog, or an animal, that they get that fight or flight, they have no choice but to respond. We as humans, when that fight or flight turns on, we have the ability to analyze, think, aware, and then respond. We don't have to react like an animal. And knowing that is very powerful, and that's why this instrument that we call a body is such a gift, and being a human being is such a gift. We have the choice to either react, the ego mind, the reptilian brain, whatever you want to call this, that gut reaction, or we can respond. And responding is that level of awareness. Okay, do I want to move into this direction, or would I prefer to move another direction and then move forward? So I thought that was a cool little take on things.
Yeah, because what we have, he talks about this too, is what humans do great at is we're great at pattern recognition. Yeah. So how do I know to respond better? Well, how to respond non-efficient, firstly. So then I pick up a pattern, and actually, other animals do this too when it comes to danger. So pattern recognition. But we actually have the ability to think about it beforehand. It could be a problem as well. At least when you kick a dog, it barks and scowls. Mm-hmm. But once you leave the room, it forgets you kicked the dog until a person could come back 10 years later and the dog will scowl, but the dog wasn't waiting there plotting how to freaking bite your ankle. Yep. We do that.
That's the power of the mind.
It's a gift and a curse, as we say. But yet, Tony Robbins gives us skills to keep focus on. One of them is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I know he talked about it a lot early in his career. I'm sure everyone that knows him probably knows that. But yeah, it's just changing your response to certain things by imagery of who you want to be, so you no longer get a response to that thing that was overcoming you, whether it's a habit or a reaction, whatever. So again,
and that stuff the yogis have been talking about for thousands of years. It's Western culture that put this is NLP. This is your reticular activating system. This is your blah, blah, blah. These concept guys have been discussed for thousands of years. We're just starting to label them now in science, neuroscience, all that.
Yeah, so we created a language called neuroscience and science or whatever to better to relate it to the masses. Because even like you talk about all the yogis and stuff like that, there was still a hell of a lot of people that didn't get this shit. Because if they did, we wouldn't be here. So there was a handful of people back in the day that got it. Like you go back to 2,000 years ago, you had like Jesus, 2,600 years ago, you had Buddha. Well, obviously there was something wrong where those people stood out. What's happening now is there's a lot more people that understand the concepts of what maybe Buddha and Jesus were actually talking about. Are they living them? Yeah, I'm sure there's people on the planet living them, but to what degree, I don't know. I can only pertain to myself, and I'm not quite there yet. Working on it. Working on it. But at least I know not to lie to myself anymore.
Yeah, right.
At least I know what patterns don't work. And if I fall into it's a habit. So then I have to go into this understanding of like, okay, how do I recognize this pattern? It's not working. So how do I overcome it? Well, flip it out with a new pattern that's more beneficial. In that instance, I must be conscious. That's why I go into like a Tony Robbins retreat or, week-long event. Yeah, more of an event, I should call them. And again, I personally haven't been to one, but I've watched online, so I participated, but I wasn't there. But yet, you get the feel of it. But it's like watching a concert on TV. It's great, but it's not like actually being in the room. It's completely different because I have been to large events, and there's something about the energy that overcomes you to where it almost automatically implants the new pattern. Now, once you leave the seminar, you have to make sure you don't lose that pattern and go back to the other one because the other one is always lurking around the corner. And over time, one step at a time, that old pattern is no longer noticeable. Like I could look at myself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and like that was like it would almost be like I'm on a set of a new movie and I'm thinking about an old character I played that's already done. And rather than I'm still dragging this character around, and I'm using these techniques that Tony Robbins just showed us and other people, but he's definitely a master at it. That's for sure.
He is. I just want to stress, there's no difference from.
Don't stress.
Yeah,
just
right.
Take a breath.
There's no difference from the teachings of Buddha, from the teachings of Christ, from the teachings of Tony Robbins, from the and that's the thing. Our mind puts them on these like different. Oh, this is Christ. Oh, this is Buddha. Oh, this is Tony Robbins. I got to put him down here. He's not in the spirit. No, guys. We're all talking about the same concept. We're all talking about the same thing.
Different perspective.
And it comes from within. That's it.
Yeah, different perspective.
It's just a different perspective. We're all like Christ, Buddha, Tony. They're all each one of the blind men who are all touching that elephant, and they're all describing them in a different way. And just because they describe an elephant, in their own way, they're all still talking about an elephant, and that's what we're talking about here, And this is why we're covering a Tony Robbins on this. Is we want not only Tony, I mean everything you're experiencing in your life is a reflection to show you what you can learn about yourself. It's just we've often that's just a motivational speaker, that's a finance speaker, that's this, but all these speakers, they're all talking about the same thing, and that same thing all comes from within. So let's dive into this first episode, or this first clip.
First episode.
This first clip.
Here we go. Check out Tony.
When you get in certain states, you think one thought. When you get in other states, you think another thought. It's like turning the channel. Right. And so what I really show people in the book how to do is how to turn the channel so that you're not suffering and you're living in a beautiful state. But what does it take? Let's just quickly say it. Number one, it takes acknowledging what's your favorite flavor of suffering. Is it worry? Is it stress? Is it anger? Is it loneliness? Is it boredom? Is it overwhelm? And then noticing what are the thoughts that trigger that, and realizing it doesn't matter how much money you have, those thoughts can still make a billionaire crazy and frustrated and overwhelmed. And so what I show people to do is a process of how to let go of those thoughts. And we walk through that in the book in detail. But fundamentally, it starts with making the most important decision of your life, which is, if I would ask me up until 2 years ago, I would say it's who you spend time with, who you love. Because who you spend time with is who you become. Mm-hmm. I think it's still one of the most important decisions in life. But you can pick the right person and still do things in your head and make yourself miserable. So you really have to decide. The most important decision is, do I want to be happy? Will I commit to being happy? More important than happy. Sometimes you can be so happy you smile so much your face hurts, right? You need variety. Am I committed to living in a beautiful state even when it doesn't go my way? Even when it rains on my parade, even when my biggest fear shows up. Because I can't control whether your husband or wife will live or die or get sick or leave you or get a divorce. I don't want any of that to happen to any human being. I hate suffering. I do anything I can to help people not suffer. But I can't control that. You can. There are people who have lost their arms, lost their sight. There have been people that have been through the most horrific experiences in life, and they found a way to still be happy because they've made the decision that life is too short to suffer. I've interviewed dozens and hundreds over the years, but dozens that have impacted my soul, that made me realize I can change this. I've just gotten used to it. I've bought into the theory that this survival software that's constantly running in making you suffer, that's normal. No, that's what the mind will do. And mind has been around forever. What I'm going to do is something different. And the way I get out of suffering, I give myself a 90-second rule. It's really simple. I say, look, if I feel myself starting to feel that stress, feeling that pissed offness or upsetness or concern or worry about my kid, whatever, I realize that's not going to make it better. Life's too short to suffer. And then I just kind of breathe slowly, slow everything down, and I just watch the thought go by and go, look at that crazy thought. Because everybody's had crazy thoughts. Everybody's had a thought, I'm going to kill that son of a bitch, right? And then you don't kill them because you don't believe that thought. It's the thoughts that are stressful that you believe that mess you up. When you question them, you break the pattern. And then the last thing besides the 90 seconds, and by the way, Richard, be honest, in the beginning, it should have been like 4-hour rule, maybe a 4-day rule. I was not very good.
A waiting period.
Yes. But what's nice is the more I've done it's like a muscle. The more I've trained myself to do it, I can authentically tell you now, it takes a lot for something to take more than 90 seconds for me now. And the level of joy surpasses all the money you could ever have in a million years. And then the money, it's easier to even make money because you're not attached. You don't have the fears. You don't have the scarcity that people have because you feel so rich already right now. I always tell people, don't wait to be rich. What is that richness? It's abundance, it's joy, it's happiness, it's contribution. It's getting out of yourself. Because as long as we're thinking about, oh my God, I lost something, or you did something, now I have less love, less respect, less money. If I think lost less, or because you did something, or because I did something, I'm never going to have what I want in my life. Loss, less, never. Those 3 thought patterns, they're the source of all suffering. And the antidote, see it for what it really is, know it's BS, and find something to appreciate.
Yeah, I like how he breaks stuff down. He's very eloquent that way.
Great clip. But I mean, that at the crux of it summarizes everything at the core and essence of what these spiritual teachers are talking about. He's just phrasing it in a different way for the modern person.
Teacher, yeah.
Of course, of course. I want to really mesh the idea that, hey, because I think that's because for me personally, I put it on like a different category. Okay, that's motivational speaker. That can't help me. That's false, and that's what I'm trying to convey to listeners.
Hence why we have perspective shift.
Yes, yes.
And that's what it is he takes a certain perspective and the reason his audiences are so large is because most people's perspective is
financial
freedom into the outside world. And again, he shows you how to put the horse in front of the cart, where a lot of us had the cart in front of the horse, and it's very cumbersome travel that way. It can be done, but it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But when you put the horse in front of the cart, it's a smoother ride. You can control the horse, and the horse will go wherever it is you want. And the way he does that is by taking you – and like if someone said they couldn't do this, it's because they look at the whole – like, in other words, you take the story of Tony Robbins, like at 17 years old, had nothing, and he's poor, and all of a sudden here he is now – in his 60s, he's, a billionaire, and, he wouldn't even focus on the money. That's overwhelming for anyone to if you're trying to catch up to him, it's not about that. And he still has to take every step every day to keep going. So it's not about catching up to anybody. It's knowing, okay, am I a little healthier than I was yesterday? Am I happier than I was yesterday? Do I have a little bit more stability than I have yesterday, more certainty? If you have a little bit more of that, you keep moving, all of a sudden, a week, a year, 2 years, you go by, you realize, wow, things have changed. I'm like, yes, because you kept moving in a direction. You use these skills. There's no secret to life. There really isn't. It's just that you didn't know it, so then we call it, oh, my God, it's a secret. I'm like, it's not a secret. People have been doing this. People have always done it, always had it. I'm like, but guess what? The secret doesn't abandon you from when things happen, how to respond. I'm like, well, until something bad happens, that's when you learn how to respond. Don't think you're supposed to know beforehand. Yeah. You can't. Like the first time I was punched, I knew how to take a punch, but I had to get punched before that. And I remember I told that story years ago. But when I was a kid, I was like 14 years old. My dad, I think I had my first sparring. I started sparring at 8 years old, but I was 14 years old. I'm at the gym. And I'm in the ring with my dad, and we're standing. I'm in my stance, and he's like, "I put your hands down." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Put your hands down." And I put my hands down, and he bam, jabbed me right in the face. He goes, "Never put your hands down when you're in the ring."
That sounds so like your dad.
And I'm like, well, and he goes, I could have told you, which he's been telling me my whole
Poor
life.
Frank, you're sitting on a bloody nose. You're my dad, dude.
Yeah. But my whole life, my whole training by him, he told me never put my hands down. It was a weird concept. But when I got nailed with that jab, I'll never put my hands down. You could tell me to put my hands down, I'm going to be like, fuck you, buddy.
Nice try. These hands are staying
I've been
exactly
down this
where
road.
they're
Nothing's going to happen, right? And there's no secret to it. There really isn't. But what happens is when you follow these practices and you don't go too far away from you, stay steadfast, it looks like your life was a secret. Yeah. Because most people... And I say this from my experience when I was younger. I was all over the place. I was driving down the road. I was heading east and I head west. I was circling around. I drove 30 miles a day and I got nowhere. But yet I put 30 miles on my car, so to speak, in a metaphoric understanding. Mm-hmm. But yet there's something to be seen. We human beings, we're naturally pattern recognition. We also know what it is to expand. Everyone does. So
well, let's break down why you put 30 miles on the car, without knowing why you were going east and going west. When we're not in control, or when we're not aware, control's not the best word, probably aware. When we're not aware of the thinking mind, we're constantly reacting to the world outside of us.
Yeah.
So we're seeing the world outside of us go on, and we're just reacting to whatever that situation is. It's not until we create a sense of focus of where we want to go that we start traveling in that direction. So sure, we've got desires and hopes, like, okay, I want to be a millionaire and I want to have a great family. From? Well, yeah, totally.
Yes, ask yourself where that came from.
Yeah.
So it's not that you really want to be a millionaire. You want to have such steadfast focus that $1 million comes out of that. That's really what we want. It's not the $1 million because, hey, we hear people win the lottery all the time, and 6 years later when they're broke and they're in debt for like $200 million, they're in debt for like $2 million. They're like, holy shit, is this what I wish for? You wish for the steadfast focus that created the $1 million, not the $1 million itself. $1 million is just an arbitrary thing, by the way.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to walk people through the feeling of we all say, oh, I've got goals. You can ask anybody, and they're gonna, even if they don't, they're gonna be like, oh, I've got goals. I want to be rich. I want to be powerful. I want this. I want that. They make up these goals,
but that's not really a goal. That's the outcome of what will happen with the goals along the way.
But they still they believe when they're stuck in the ego mind, like, I have goals. I want this. This is what I'm going for. But no, that's things that are desires, things they want. And it's not until we say, okay, I'm going to move towards my goals, and I'm not going to allow things that, obstacles that come up to pull me off the path, etc. This is why crises come up and different type of stuff. We're like, oh, what's happening to me? Of course this wouldn't work for me, and of course this would stop me from becoming, meeting my goals this year or becoming a doctor or whatever you want to do, And we allow the outside world to beat us down when in reality that it's moving through those that is how we get to our goal quicker.
Yeah, but that's the question, like, because that's what he does when he gets a client. Why do you want this? Well, it was like, well, I want $1 million so I could live in a big, beautiful house for free. It's like, but why do you want that? And you get to that question, people they have no idea why they want to live in a big house because I want the status of people. But why do you want that? And then all of a sudden it breaks apart. So he teaches you it's not about the wanting, it's the fulfillment. And the wanting and all those things show up. So that's really what it is. We want, like, okay, if you have true fulfillment and you move in a direction, you're gonna have, I don't know how much money, but you're gonna have money, you're gonna have support. It's just how it works. It's the physics of the world, the physics of the universe. And the reason a lot of times too we've gone 30 miles, gone nowhere, is because we'd rather be doing something, than not doing. But yet, if you put effectiveness, steadfast focus on, along with doing it, again, doing is putting, I could put the horse in back of the cart and push the cart, and I'm doing something, but it's very cumbersome. It's very, laborious at best. But when I actually learn to focus and put the horse in front of the cart, all of a sudden things open up that you never knew about. Like, wow. And it leads, because there's always something. When I come across the finish line, what's the finish line? It's just a new starting line. That's all it really is.
How do we put the cart in front of, or the horse in front of the cart.
It's understanding what do we want? We want fulfillment. And where do we find fulfillment? In focus. Whatever you focus on. Like if you're hanging out with, like on this podcast, I'm not thinking about anything else but this podcast right now. So my focus is on this moment in time. No other moment exists. So whatever happens, the words come out of my mouth. We didn't write this down. We had no idea we're going down this direction. I didn't know you were going to pull this video up.
Yep.
So I stay steadfast and focused, and if I do that, I make less mistakes like I'm doing right now with my vocabulary and my viewpoint and everything else. Mm-hmm. And then when the show ends, my focus goes somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, oh, we have more viewers and I'm making more money and stuff like that. Yeah, well, that's let me know I'm doing something right. I'm doing something that the people want to listen to. I'm doing something that works for me. So, okay, boom, keep moving in that direction, see what happens. Yeah. That's really what fulfillment is, knowing and moving in a direction, is this feeling and knowing that you're helping people, even if it's one person. But if my goal is just to make $1 million, yeah, you might, okay. A lot of people do this. Why? Okay. There's fulfillment there. Why? I want to help my family. Ah, that's admirable. Okay, that's good. I want to help family. Well, how do you think you help a family? Well, just clicking you snap your fingers to make $1 million. Because now, hey, if I have a kid, I want to show them how to make $1 million. Well, if you won the lottery, good luck with that teaching, right? There's something in focus. So even someone that's very wealthy will take their kid back to nuts and bolts, the bare minimum, right? To teach them. That's how you do it. You know, yeah, it's easy when you have resources, but it's so much more powerful when you become resourceful to create the resources that come about. And then he's a big proponent of talking about being resourceful, not counting on resources. So like he said in this clip, when things don't go your way, this is where you realize I'm resourceful. Because if everything went your way, you wouldn't need to be resourceful. You really wouldn't. If someone kept throwing wild punches, I just slip back. I wouldn't have to be a good boxer. But when someone's punching at me with target precision, oh shit, I got to be resourceful now. I got to figure a way to do this, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to fight somebody. We think we want to beat the person. I'm like, no, I want to see how good I am. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily win. I want to see how good I am. And if I win, I'm like, oh, cool. Well, guess what? Next guy coming up, just he knows what you did, so you better, he's going to point it out to you, Mm-hmm. And a true champion doesn't worry about losing. They just worry about getting up. Yeah. They know they can get up, and that's what it's about. It's not about losing. It's about how do I get up from this? And guess what? You're going to be knocked down. I just know how to get up and brush my knees off and keep moving. If I get up, I'm moving in the same direction, so to speak. And Tony Robbins... And I listen to him a lot. So, because I didn't hear this anywhere else in my life. Yeah, listen, spiritual teachers told me how to, calm down, relax, which helped. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that. But look, playing in this world, he was one of the first. And now when I take what Ram Dass said, okay, I get what Ram Dass is talking about because he did it brilliantly. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't, like Tony Robbins, I know he talked to Sadhguru. He even talked to him and his wife, did a podcast with even,
Deepak Chopra?
They've
done him.
What's his name? Michael Singer.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, they had Michael Singer. It was brilliant.
Sweet.
I loved it. And, Michael Singer has that, he surrenders, mm-hmm. but yet the guy owned $1 billion company. Well, he sold a company that was worth, I think, $3 to $5 billion. So, mm-hmm. So he's not a guy that just sits around, but you look at him, he definitely doesn't have the attitude or the way Tony Robbins is, but they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Which is so powerful.
Yeah, oh yeah. Because they're helping people in a manner that's teaching focus.
Well, that's why I wanted to do this perspective shift show with you, Frank, originally, back when we started this, 2019, 2020, whenever that was.
Yeah.
I remember I couldn't get enough of these concepts, and I realized everybody is talking about the skeleton key to life, which is consciousness, in my opinion. Every way I would hear it, I would hear something different that would spark something new in me.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about each one of these different speakers and teachers and et cetera, is they talk about it from a little different of a perspective. And some of those perspectives will just open you so wide up and connect with you in a way that you're like, oh my God, I went through that, or I know that resonates, that rings so true to me. And that's what I hope this podcast does for the listeners at home is whoever it is, whether that's a Ram Dass, whether that's a Tony Robbins, whether that's, whoever.
Sadhguru.
Sadhguru, Neville Goddard, you name it.
Yeah.
Is just that you get it. and that's the point of this perspective shift is, I swear, go through our episode. There's going to be one of these teachers that's going to click for you. I know this because, Dr. Joe Dispenza was that first initial click of the system for me. And I had a real analytical left brain conditioned thinking mind. And I needed to hear it from a scientific perspective for my brain to even believe it a little bit. You couldn't have given me a Bashar, when back in the day. And I've been like, what the fuck? I've been like, dude, get out of here. This is nuts. Where now, guys, Bashar is like one of the most influential people for me. Like the words that come from Bashar and like when he channels and does that whole, oh my God, the words that come out of that man's mouth resonate so much with me. But it's because I heard it one way that allowed it to click, and now it's like it's clicking from multiple ways. So I hope Tony's doing that.
Yeah, I think
for a lot of people out there stuck in that left brain thinking mind only, where they think money's everything.
So when you think about the road you're traveling down, now look at it as a road that's heading up a mountain via spiral, what have you on. And so as you're moving up this mountain, and in order to do that, you have to do switchbacks. So it's not like an A-line straight up because you won't be able to make it. So you're doing switchbacks. Even at sometimes it seems to be a plateau on the switchback because it has to be level for you to walk it up, for you to walk up it. But what you notice is you're moving to different altitudes, and a different altitude as I look straight out or look down at the valley, I start to see, wow, that's why I had a problem. But your problem is what made you walk up the switchbacks on the mountain. So you can never look back at the problem. So I wish I knew then what I know now. I'm like, the only reason you know now is because you didn't know then to experience this moment in time to become wise to know now. So refrain from doing that because it just seems to be a waste of time. Regrets, again, seems to be a waste of time. Yes, pattern recognition. What you didn't work last time. Recognize that. Thank you. Don't regret it, but now I know. Don't put my hands down when my dad's in the ring with me.
Yes.
Anybody else, perhaps, and not my dad.
Yes, exactly.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And, and Tony really walks these through. He's brilliant at it. I learn a lot from him every day when I listen to him about his different ways. I'm like, wow, he literally spends his life on reading books, reading different people. Like his new book, I'm not completely done with yet, but it's really good. It's Life Force. So what he did with a lot of businesses and other ways of overcoming psychology, he took it into the field of medicine and healing the body. He did the same thing. Goes to the top people in the world, which he's at this ability right now where he created it. It's not like it was handed to him, where he can sit down and talk to anybody and they'll return his call. Mm-hmm. And that's because he never stopped to switch back up the mountain. Never stopped it. You keep doing that, you'll get to that place and where you need to be in life, and you'll realize, wow, it's so much easier up here.
Well, touching on that note too, that path. That's not an easy path. One of the things during my research this last week at Tony Robbins has had the shit sued out of him so many times in the last 10, 15, 20 years for different, events, copyright, all sorts of stuff. And he doesn't give up. He keeps going. After so many lawsuits, you think, fuck all this. I'm just going to take my billions and I'm going to go to an island. No, because he really is practicing what he's talking about, guys. It doesn't just you make $1 million and then life's easy now. I get to check out. I did it. Ding, ding, ding. That's what we all think. That's why we want to be a millionaire, so we can allow ourselves to feel the way we can allow ourselves to feel right now.
Well, this is why a lot of people don't want to be millionaires, because they think they'll be sued every day and stuff like that. The thing is, if you take the nice journey up the mountain, using the switchbacks and grinding at times, and times it's easy. It's how life is. The time you get to the point where you're worth millions of dollars and people are suing you, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Like, the reason he doesn't stress over because he deals with it all the time. Like, when you're at that level, this is what happens. But it's like, the first time you're driving a car, you have to be focused, and someone, you got a red light. Oh my God, I got to deal with traffic. I'm like, yeah, but after a while, you learn to deal with it. But the higher you go up, there's something always new. But he actually finds joy in these places of challenge.
Yeah, such finesse.
Yeah, because now it's like, okay, I've never been sued for this before, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And in the book Life Force, I never been dealt with this health thing. How do I overcome it? Like the story tells about his shoulder. He was in a snowboarding accident, and I'm not sure how old he was. But I'm saying he was in the 60s. I don't know how. The book just came out.
Probably
not that long
50s or 60s.
Yeah, well, he's 60. What is it? 1960s.
A relatively new story, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah, it was relatively new. Because the book is, I believe it's his latest book. Unless the guy probably comes out with a book every year. Like he writes a lot. But so reading it, he's telling the story how he fell snowboarding and ripped his shoulder bad. So he went to a surgeon, and they okay, this is what we want to do, and second opinion, third opinion. Then he says, I finally found somebody to tell me what I wanted to hear, so to speak. And they were doing stem cell therapy in, I believe it's Panama, that we're not doing here. We're doing stem cell, but to a different rate. So we went down there, and pretty much he had the stem cell treatment. And he claims, and I'm sure he's a guy that can't lie because everyone's looking at him. In 2 days, he was able to move his shoulder. It reconstructed itself. So here he's finding this information. Why? Well, listen, he's writing a book about it. So I was telling this to a client of mine. They're like, oh, my God, why can't we get that? I'm like, well, it's coming soon. I'm like, why? Because Tony Robbins wrote a book, and how the hell do you ignore that? I don't give a shit for the FDA. Mm-hmm. And then because of that, he was asked to be the cleanup speaker at a conference that was run by the Vatican, the Pope. And the Pope actually asked him because of his experience with the stem cell. So here he has gotten the Pope calling. He has the Pope calling him.
Pope giving him a call. Hey, Tony.
Give him a call. Hey, Tony, I need to. Yeah.
The Pope called, but we told him we were doing Tony Robbins this
like,
week.
I got a lunch. I don't know if I can make it.
When do we have the Pope on our show?
Tony, the Pope's. Tell him I'll call him back. But yeah, with the Pope, yeah. So this is how far reach he has. And the reason he has this reach is not because of scandal or I should say paying off. It's because he genuinely cares about individuals and collective human beings. He really does. And, it's easy to take shots at a person like that if you don't fully understand them. And that's why, I've learned that through life as I'm getting older. When people start criticizing somebody, I'm like, okay. I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. I used to do it when I was younger. Now I fully dive into that person. I read them. Then at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, this person's, you got to keep your eye on them. But most of the time, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I can see how you misskewed that information, but that is not the core of this person. This person really cares. And when people, they put themselves out there on the line, and if you just got a soundbite, you're like, what the hell? This person's evil. I'm like, no, they're not. Like when you saw... what the hell was it? Hal?
Shallow Hal.
Shallow Hal.
Yep.
And then he hits him in the head.
Yeah.
And Tony Robbins is playing on that field because he realized it's more than just somebody blessing you on the head. There's a lot more behind it.
That movie had a good meaning behind it.
It was great.
Yeah.
But it was down into a very soft way of telling the story. But there is a deeper understanding, a deeper meaning to that we all have privilege or we have the ability to actually access that, and that's what those show us. But if you just see it from that vantage point, people are like, oh yeah, well, that's him. Tony Robbins granted him, and therefore he was hit. Like it's almost like he was Harry Potter.
Yep.
Paris like Harry Potter. Oh yeah, it's great fantasy. I'm like, no, we all have a wand.
We do.
It's called our imagination, people.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you know how to wield it, it works.
It's
right?
the most powerful tool in the world.
And if you keep doing it every day, all of a sudden, how often did Harry Potter have to use his wand before he
You could just...
I thought it just popped in my head. I swear to God. I'm like... his implement in order to produce what he needed.
Yeah. I like where you're going with that.
Oh, Jesus. All right. I heard the word wand. I'm like, oh, that just, my mind just went elsewhere.
That's funny.
See, I got distracted. I need work. I need to call Tony.
Got to call up our man Tony.
Yeah.
I do want to share one more thing about this clip before we jump to the next.
Yeah, go
so I
for
wrote
it.
down one of the reasons I picked that clip was he talks about we have this survival structure, in our brains, in our mind, and we consider it to be normal. And this is the reality, I would say, 98% of the world lives in, which is I'm in this constant state of unsatisfactoriness, and as soon as I get something outside of me, then it will be good. And then we go and we get that thing, and then it's not good, and we just kind of, it must be this. It's not the house and the kids. It must be the wife. It must be that husband. It must be, I just need a child. All that job. And we keep putting the goals outside of us, and we're like, I'll feel happy when. And we all have this unsatisfactory, constant feeling of never being happy. And it's because we've been confusing happiness as if it's something we obtain, we purchase. No, it's a state of being. And so when he said we have this survival software that we all consider normal, remind yourself that. Like, we don't need to consider this experience of a rat race normal, but we do. And so we must allow ourselves to put some space in between that and go, hey, just because society portrays us as normal in our media, social media, movies, television, does not mean I need to fall victim to that state.
No.
And that was something that was big for me early on, was I realized, oh my God, this normal state of being, that how everybody normally lives, is actually so utterly insane, it's not even funny. And it was hard for me to disconnect from that, because I was like, wait, that's how normal people act. That's normal. No, it's not normal at all.
Yeah. Just like it's not normal for me to laugh when I say wand.
Hey.
Yeah, shit goes.
Just one of those days, man.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into the next clip.
Let's do it.
Dr. Seligman is very famous for doing studies on optimism. And in those studies, you know what he found out? People that are pessimists are much more realistic. They're much more accurate. If you give them a test and you ask them to look at something and give you a size measurement of it, or to evaluate their own success or failure in a task, and every study Seligman's done, he did it in the University, I think Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly, originally, what he found was that optimists always see themselves as doing better than they really did. They basically BS themselves. What happens to pessimists, they're 10 times more accurate. But here's what he found out. What he found out is because the people who are accurate never push themselves because they know it's never going to work anyway. Whereas the optimist sees it better than it is, so they keep doing it. Because they have the illusion they did well, I'll do even better next time. And because of that optimism, they did it more often, and so optimists succeed at a 4 to 5-fold, depending upon the task, result ultimately beyond anything that a pessimist will do, and they're not as accurate. All that's a big way of saying is, if you can develop a psychology of resilience in yourself, you don't have to be optimistic or fake, you can be real. The realness is, whatever shows up, you are larger than anything that can happen to you.
That's a great point.
I was going to say, I love this clip for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Number one, the reason we stay stuck in this thinking mind is because we reason, right? We have this skill called reasoning, we use our brains. And yes, if you break down the reasoning, statistically speaking, there's a lot of people, or when somebody feels right and they know things are factual, etc., they stick to it, right? Like, nope, there's no way you can become a movie star because the odds of you succeeding are this. Let me break it down for you statistically, etc., blah, 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 right? Well, great. You're right, with your statistics. You're right. You're there. But there's this something out there, and that something out there is this seed of consciousness, and it gives you this ability to break beyond. And this is what quantum physics has discovered. We have quantum activity happening in this world. So strange we can't even describe it. And it's understanding that despite all odds, I can still achieve something, and I can do something. And Tony's saying here, they measured this. They took these group of people who, nope, this will never work for me. I can't. Great. Yeah, you're probably right. But this is why those, optimist is what he's calling them in this, succeed 5-fold, 5 times the amount of the pessimist. So if you're succeeding as an optimist 5 times more than a pessimist, why the fuck are you a pessimist? Do you want to not succeed? The answer is you want to be right, and that's where the ego comes into play. And the ego would rather be right than get what it really wants, which is whatever it's shooting for, whatever that goal is. Because if you're 5 times more likely to achieve something just by having an optimistic view upon it, what's your argument then? I want to be right.
Well, it's that too, and what he doesn't bring it up in this particular clip, but he's talked about before, is when a pessimist states something, they're actually talking about the past. Just like the words come out of my mouth are the past energy field impact of my thoughts coming out of my mouth. So you can never solidify those. That's why the pessimist is never actually right.
Right.
Because the person, yes, I could be aware of where I'm at, but if I'm driving my car and say, well, you got to look at where you're at, that means I have to look at the floorboard of my car, and good luck driving. I tell you that, it'll be very difficult. I'm actually looking at, it depends how good my eyesight is, to say 500 yards out the road. I'm actually looking ahead. That's not a pessimistic view. That's a positive view. That's someone that actually has it. So pessimism is looking at what's happening now. It would be like looking out the side window to see where you are. But that keeps changing because quantum physics tells us nothing remains the same. Everything's moving. So why not move in the direction in where you want to go? And that's what the optimist does. So it's physics. This is not, physics actually will explain psychology, not the other way around. So, and he's talked about this before. I've heard him talk about that. So what a pessimistic is doing is actually taking a snapshot of a moment in time. And when they explain it, well, that snapshot was taken, that's history. Why are you talking about history? Let's talk about present, future. And yeah, people are aware of where they are. Like, I'm not going to look at the front windshield of my car and be in the middle of the desert and tell people I'm at the beach. I'm like, this is absurd. But I'm heading west towards the beach, so to speak, and right now I'm in the desert. But yet I'm optimistic because I'm going to keep moving in the direction. I'm going to look in the direction in which I want to go if I'm optimistic. If I'm pessimistic, I'm going to look at my feet. And good luck moving there.
Well, what would the pessimistic would say, to Martin Luther King? That's impossible. We can't cause this change. Let me show you the facts.
Yeah,
let me show you why
never been done before.
And it's, sure, you've got some good points, but I don't care. It's because that's what I'm getting at.
People need to see it to believe it. So in other words, even the pessimist, again, this conversation coming up. So even a pessimist won't disagree about landing on the moon.
Yep.
Why? Because they see it. So they're not completely out of it. But I laugh about that because someone says, you don't really believe that happened. It happened in a studio in Burbank. And I'm like,
I've heard that.
Yeah. But I find humor in that. Whatever. I'm not here to debate that.
Yep.
But it's so anything that actually could be proven throughout humanity in the moment of time, a pessimistic wouldn't go against it. So they're not downright ridiculous. They just can't see beyond the place and where they're at. And that becomes, but they're not shown. So everything they want to see is already history. So, pessimists 40 years ago would be like, there's no way in hell you're going to have a cell phone. Right now, a pessimist believes in the cell phone.
He's using it
to prove on Google that you're wrong.
Exactly.
And by the way, when you Google something, it's history.
Yeah.
Because somebody had to put it in an algorithm setting, and the time it got to you, it was already done. What Tony Robbins is teaching is not to reiterate, although use pattern recognition from people that were that did it right, that were the people in the forefront. Everyone from the Einsteins to the Steve Jobs. When you do what they do and do that, you'll actually become the next one. It's not about reiterating. I don't want to be, another one of this one. I want to be pulling information from my Akashic records, like all these other people did. And like Tony Robbins, he's taken all this information, but the way he's revealing has been different than anyone before. So he's collecting a bunch of different pages and then putting his own touch on it, which makes it a completely different book, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that's the brilliance of it. So we didn't come here to just reiterate. Like even me and Mike talking about Tony Robbins, we're talking about from the perspective and how we see him. Mike's different than me slightly or whatever, but we both obviously, one day we should do one where you don't like the person I like, or the other way around, but that'd be weird. But
that's funny.
Yeah. But we're coming at from different angles, and that's the brilliance of it. But we can only do that from a place of not reiterating. I'm not thinking about Tony Robbins based on what people told me to think about him. No, I'm watching him, and I'm watching him carefully, and I'm picking what I need to see. Like Mike was like, "Oh wow," I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even look at it that way." I'm like, I look at it from this way, and that's what we're here to do.
That's it.
Yeah. So when you have time to negate some of these ideas, when you have time to criticize somebody, it's a waste of time. It really is. If I'm not saying take everything in, but if someone's not truthful, just go the other way. Don't spend time.
And you touched on something good too. Like if you're being told that something is not good or something is good, investigate. Yeah. do a little bit of work. Don't just say, "Oh, Fox News, CNN."
Yeah, why not?
You guys are legit. You make a lot of money. This is right. This has got to be right.
Yeah, actually,
why would the government, put something on, out there that's not true?
Do you know
Come
what's
on,
funny?
guys,
the news can be looked at as people look at, especially in the past, people looking at it as a psychic.
Yeah,
that's what the news is. They're telling you how to think about something, and
so
they're
then
like,
it comes to fruition.
Yeah, well, they do that with the weather, right?
That's the narrative.
The 7-day forecast. I'm like, that's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but when they get it, I'm like, oh my god, they were right. I'm like, yeah, like I heard this statement so many times in my life. I think it's funny. Even a broken clock is twice.
Yeah, right, twice a day. Hell yeah.
The freaking weather. Why do you even look out your window? Yeah. Jesus Christ.
That's the world we live in, man.
You want to be good at predicting weather? Get arthritis. That will help you.
Get arthritis.
All right, let's move on to the next clip.
Let's jump into it.
Meaning equals emotion, and emotion equals life. I'm going to say it again. Meaning equals emotion, and emotion equals life. Can you take an event and create a horrible meaning out of a good experience? Yes or no? A great experience is not a guarantee of a great life. Great experience is not a guarantee because we can make up a story about anything. What's wrong is always available. So is what's right. And we are the meaning makers, but most of us forgot we're the meaning makers because it's on autopilot. And my goal this week is for us to wake up, to transcend. You've all heard the word transcend. You know what it means? End the trance. Transcend. The trance you've been in for decades because we let the culture or somebody who had good meaning, usually good positive intent, train us to feel and think a certain way that isn't even us. But we've done it for so many years, we think it's us. And that's where the conflict comes. How I feel versus how I'm supposed to be. What I'm supposed to do versus what I feel like doing. Who I am versus what people want me to be. And that conflict, we can see if we can't just blend that conflict in a way where it no longer exists, or if it exists, it shows up for a few moments and you pop out of it back to the truth. You wake back up. You transcend. You end the trance. Who's up for a game like that? Say I.
I.
See, that is awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's Tony Robbins. That's how he is at his events.
But that was perfect just for like what we were just touching on with everything. Like the way that flowed in was amazing because that is we're told to feel a certain way, like by the narrative of the news or whatever. Like right now I got so many people, I'm working with, clients and stuff where, hey, the economy right now, it's just, it's always got to be part of the narrative of whatever's going on. And we don't need to live like that. We've just been taught to live that way. And until we step outside of that, we're going to continue to play along with whatever story, is being told to us.
Well, I want to bring that up what he said, I think 2 clips ago, one of the clips we put, he talked about like, when things are going good and people recognize, because society says, okay, if you have a lot of money, things are going good. If your health is good, everything's going good. Yeah. It's when things go bad that we fall apart. Why is that? I'm like, it's because we're labeling everything bad. We get to get down to the fundamental of this understanding. I'm going to break it down. This is an analogy and a metaphor, right? So don't take it literally, or you can if you want. But we all came here and signed a contract, so to speak. And we came here knowing it was going to be contrast. Just like a Navy SEAL, when they join the Navy SEALs and they get into the boot camp, and I think it's the 12-week program, which is ruthless from what I understand. They understand it, but they don't know, and like a lot of them quit. There's a small percentage that make it through, and even the ones that make it through, there was a point where they were considering it, but they never say, "Why did I do this?" Because they know why they did. They want to see how mentally, physically challenged. They wanted to know how good they were, how great they were, what they can go beyond. Because if they knew they can do it, they wouldn't have done it. So every human being that came to this planet, at some level, you're like a Navy SEAL. You just got to figure out what branch you're in and stop like whining, this shouldn't be happening. I'm like, who knows this should not be happening? I never got that. I used to say that, but I don't get why this shouldn't be happening. Explain to me why COVID it shouldn't happen. I'm like, make up a story or whatever. I don't care about that. Like, I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but I look at it as an obstacle for me to overcome, not for me to figure out who got this and who did this. Like, no. And if I know I overcame that obstacle, I'm going to overcome this one. This seems a little steeper. Fine. So be it. Game on. And when game's on, I'm all in. When I'm all in, there's always going to be a solution. There really will. And that's what he teaches. Go all in. Stop fancy footing around. It's a waste of time. What do you have to lose? And, Tony Robbins, if you're interested in this podcast that we're talking about him, look at it. He's got information out there. He's got school. He got tools to help you. It's not like he sends you out into the woods with just a pocket knife. Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of tools. You go there. So anytime, look, what happens if this happens? Well, there's that tool. What happens if this happens? That's that tool. Because he went out into the wilderness with a pocket knife and a flashlight, and then he came back and, okay, I'm going to show you guys how to camp. I'm going to do that. And then you're going to figure out how to camp and teach the next generation. So one day we'll get out of the place where we're actually in war. We're in starvation. We're in hatred. That's why he's doing this. So we can end this. We can transcend, like he said, end the trance. What's happening? I'm like, I'm just going to say the same. I'm like, well, you're the cause of the war, so to speak. You're the cause of that stuff. Don't be the cause of that. Transcend. Get beyond it. Help out. We all get together. Do your part. His part is huge, but me and Mike part is just as equally as, again, we don't have many viewers. I certainly have the Pope calling me.
Not yet, Frank.
Oh, imagine how proud my dad would be.
Oh, dude, he'd be so stoked.
My dad would be proud as hell.
He'd be so stoked.
Yeah, I'm like, Dad, guess who called me the Pope? He's like, it was a fake Pope.
Yeah. Nice try, Frankie.
Nice try. I'm like, no, Dad, seriously, call me.
I promise. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But honestly, guys, that's what we're all in right now. Let's end this trance. This whole, this is the story. This is how the world is. It's like this. Life sucks. Then you die. All this shit we've been exposed to. It's not. It's something we're buying into, and that's what happened for me. How I was able to have it click was I realized I'm participating in that trance. I don't have to. I'm participating in the narrative. And so I started to slowly put space between that narrative and me. And then I started to see, oh, wow, I don't need to play by, the economic, the social, like whatever stories are out and going around that, this is how you're supposed to feel. You're a male in a Western culture. This is your identity. No, it's not. We participate and actively choose if we want to, play into a narrative or step out of a narrative. Yeah. And that's what Tony will help all listeners, come to see. He's helping you come to find your power, just like Maharishi, just like the Christ, just like Buddha. That's the key. That's what we're all talking about. We're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah. And if you find yourself in the winter of your life or a situation right now, whether it's global economy or something going on in your life, and it's winter out, just put your snowshoes on and go for a hike, because that's what you do. You
keep going.
You just keep going. I'm like, you can't walk in your regular flip-flops, but you can put snowshoes on, and there's an alternative. There's something beautiful about walking in the winter. Just know you can do it, and we wish you the best.
Absolutely. Guys, there is an unbelievable amount of content that you can find for this gentleman online, books, television shows, infomercials, seminars, all of the above.
Yeah, he's got that seminar. I think it's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, Netflix. Great place to start. Everybody's got Netflix. Go listen, the reason he calls it I'm Not Your Guru is you are your guru. Yeah. You are right there. We all are in control of our own experience. As soon as we take control of that, things start to change. So, throw his name into any platform and you're going to find some content on Tony Robbins. Don't take our word up for it, like Frank and I have been telling you. Go. At home, do I like listening to Tony? Do I find value in this? Don't listen to, anybody's opinion on anything. Figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, we'll change your life. All right, so if you like what you heard today, go down and hit that subscribe button so we can keep the show going.
Absolutely.
Me and Mac are going to keep going no matter what.
That's the plan.
We'll be like two old men. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, welcome to Perspective Shift. But seriously, thank you guys so much. And by the way, we love all the emails we're getting. We love all the comments we're getting. Thank you guys for interacting with us. Please feel free to shoot us some more mail at perspectiveshift2020@gmail.com. We love replying. We love speaking to you guys. Thank you for everybody who's reached out so far.
All right. Peace out.
See you next week.